Good evening, dear reader. My name is Mr. James Candlelight, and I'm delighted to welcome you here tonight. Tonight, we visit the Riverside Public Library, a beautiful old building made of stone and stained glass, where books have been borrowed and returned, read and loved for over 100 years. And we meet Margaret Finch, who has been the head librarian here for 53 years. She is 80 years old, and tomorrow is her last day of work, her final chapter, as she calls it. Margaret knows something that most people spend their whole lives forgetting, that every story has an ending, and that's not sad. That's what makes the story complete. She has spent 5 decades watching people begin books with excitement and finish them with satisfaction. She has seen thousands of stories end and thousands more begin. And she has learned that endings are not failures. They are necessary. They are beautiful. They are what give meaning to everything that came before. This is a story about retirement and release, about knowing when the story is complete, about closing a book with gratitude rather than regret, and trusting that when one story ends, space opens for new ones to begin. Before we step into Margaret's library, let us prepare ourselves with deep relaxation so we can fully receive the wisdom of endings. Settle in now, get comfortable, turn the page. Let's begin. Imagine yourself walking up the stone steps of an old library. The building is beautiful, classical architecture, tall windows, heavy wooden doors. You can smell old books even before you enter. That particular scent of paper and time and stories. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, and with each number, you will step deeper into the library, deeper into relaxation, deeper into the peaceful quiet that lives between the pages. 10. Feel the stone steps beneath your feet, cool, solid, worn smooth by generations of readers. Each step carries you toward knowledge, toward stories, toward rest. Let yourself be carried. You're going somewhere good. 9. Notice your body. Where are you holding tension? Perhaps in your hands, from gripping too tightly, in your neck, from looking too far ahead, in your chest, from holding your breath. Let these places soften like gold leather. Let them relax like a book falling open to a favorite page. 8. You are completely safe. Libraries are sanctuaries, sacred spaces where the world slows down. My voice guides you, but so does the silence, the good silence, the full silence, the silence that holds stories. Let yourself sink into that silence now. 7. Thoughts drift through like readers browsing shelves. Some stop. Some keep moving. Some find what they're looking for. Some don't. You don't need to organize every thought. You don't need to catalog every feeling. Just let them browse, let them wonder, let them be. 6. This moment is yours. This rest is necessary. You've been reading the story of your day for so long, So many pages, so much plot. But now you can set the book down, mark your place, rest your eyes. The story will be there when you return. 5. Peace lives in you like a favorite book lives on a shelf. Always there, always waiting, always ready to open and welcome you home. You don't have to search for it. You just have to remember where you left it. Find it now. That peaceful place inside, that quiet chapter. 4. Breathe in gratitude for stories, for endings, for beginnings, for the people who tend the books, for the spaces that hold the silence, for the knowledge that everything has its time, its place, its proper conclusion. 3. You can see it now through tall windows, rows of books, warm light, a figure at the desk. This is the library. This is where endings are understood, where conclusions are honored, where you can learn to close your own chapters with grace. 2. Your body is so heavy now, so relaxed. Like a book that's been read so many times, it falls open naturally to the best parts. Well worn, well loved, complete. That's what you are. Complete just as you are. 1. Push open the heavy door. The library welcomes you. As the story unfolds, you will meet Margaret and learn what she knows about endings. You are safe. You are welcome. You are ready. And now we enter the library for Margaret's final chapter. The Riverside Public Library is exactly what a library should be. High ceilings with ornate molding, tall windows that let in soft, filtered light, shelves made of dark wood, stretching from floor to ceiling, filled with thousands of books. The furniture is old but well maintained, reading tables with green shaded lamps, leather chairs worn soft by decades of readers, a reference desk made of oak, substantial and permanent. It smells like every library you've ever loved, paper and leather and time and possibility. There's a particular quality to library silence. It's not empty. It's full of stories waiting, full of knowledge resting, full of people thinking and imagining and discovering. At the main desk sits Margaret Finch. She's 80 years old, small and slight, with white hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wears a cardigan despite the warm day, and reading glasses hang on a chain around her neck. She's processing returns, checking each book carefully before reshelving it. Her movements are efficient but unhurried. She's done this tens of thousands of times, and she still does it with care. You approach the desk, and she looks up with a smile. "Good afternoon," she says. Her voice is soft but clear. "May I help you find something?" "Actually," you say, "I heard tomorrow is your last day." After 53 years, Margaret's smile deepens. Word travels fast in a small town. Yes, tomorrow is my final day, my last chapter, so to speak. "That must be hard," you say. leaving after so long. She considers this, setting down the book she was holding. Would you like some tea? I was just about to make a pot, and I'd be happy to talk, if you have time. You nod, and she stands with a slight wince, arthritis probably, and gestures for you to follow. Margaret's office is small but perfect. More books, of course, a worn desk covered in neat piles, a window overlooking the street, and in the corner, an electric kettle and a small collection of teas. She makes tea with the same care she does everything else, warming the pot, measuring the leaves, timing the steep. When she pours, the tea is the color of honey. You sit in a comfortable chair across from her desk. She settles into her own chair with a satisfied sigh. You asked if it's hard, she says, picking up the conversation. Leaving after 53 years, the honest answer is yes and no. She sips her tea. It's hard because I love this place. I love these books. I love the people who come here, the regulars who've been coming for decades, the children discovering reading for the first time, the teenagers hiding from the world, the elderly finding companionship. But it's not hard because I know it's time. And that's the important thing, knowing when the story is complete. How do you know? You ask. Margaret smiles. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. How do you know when to turn the final page, when to close the book and set it on the shelf? She looks around her office at the decades of accumulated memories. I think you know because you've said everything you needed to say. You've learned what you needed to learn. You've given what you needed to give. When there's nothing left but repetition, when you're just rereading the same chapters over and over, that's when you know it's time for the end. When did you start working here? You ask. Margaret's eyes become distant with memory. 1972. I was 27 years old, fresh out of library school, terrified and excited in equal measure. The head librarian then was a formidable woman named Mrs. Ashworth. She was 65 and had been here since 1945. I thought she'd work forever. But after I'd been here 6 months, she called me into this very office and said, "Margaret, I'm retiring at the end of the month. I'm recommending you as my replacement." I was shocked. I said, "But Mrs. Ashworth, you love this library. You're not that old. Why are you leaving?" Margaret smiles at the memory. She said something I've never forgotten. She said, "Margaret, I don't love this library more than life itself. I love it exactly as much as life itself, which means I know it needs to continue after me, to grow beyond me, to become something I can't imagine. If I stay too long, I become the story instead of the storyteller, and that's not what a librarian should be." I didn't understand then. I was young. I thought love meant never letting go. But now, Margaret looks at you. Now, I understand completely. Mrs. Ashworth was right. There's a time to hold on and a time to release, and the wisdom is in knowing which is which. What will happen to the library? you ask, after you're gone? Oh, it will thrive, Margaret says with confidence. We have a wonderful young woman. Well, young to me, she's 43, named Sarah. She's been my assistant director for 5 years. She's brilliant, creative, full of ideas I never would have had. She wants to add a digital learning lab, expand our community programs, partner with local schools in new ways. These are all things I could never do, not because I'm incapable, but because I am of a different time. My way was the right way for my era. Her way will be the right way for hers. That's how stories work. They evolve, they grow, they change with each telling. She sets down her teacup. If I stayed, I'd hold her back. I'd resist changes that scare me but excite her. I'd be the old character who refuses to leave the stage, even though their part in the story is done. That's not service. That's ego. And a good librarian serves the library, not herself. You think about this, about how hard it is to step aside, to let go, to admit your chapter is ending. How do you not feel obsolete, you ask? Like you're being replaced, made irrelevant? Margaret's laugh is gentle. Oh, I am being replaced. That's the point. That's what should happen. The library doesn't need me anymore. It needs Sarah. It needs fresh energy, new ideas, different perspectives. But that doesn't make my 53 years irrelevant. My chapter was important. It was necessary. It was good, but it was one chapter in a much longer story. The story of this library began in 1923. I arrived in 1972, almost 50 years into the story. I leave in 2025, 102 years into the story. I was never the whole story, just one chapter. And that's not diminishment. That's reality. That's how stories work. Margaret pulls a book from her desk drawer. It's old, leather-bound, clearly precious. This is my resignation letter, she says, but she's smiling. I wrote it like a final chapter in a book. Would you like to hear it? You nod. She opens the book and reads. Chapter 53, The Final Page. After 53 years of service, 512 months, 2,274 weeks, 15,918 days, Margaret Finch closes her chapter as head librarian of Riverside Public Library. In this chapter, she has processed 1.2 million book checkouts, helped approximately 47,000 people find the exact book they needed, read 1,247 stories to children during story time, recommended books to 3 generations of the same families, preserved the quiet dignity of this space through changing times, taught 15 assistant librarians who went on to lead libraries of their own, ensured that everyone who entered felt welcome, seen, and valued. This has been a good chapter, a complete chapter, a chapter she is proud to have written. And now, as all good chapters must, it comes to its natural conclusion. The end, but not the end of the library. Only the end of this particular story within its walls. New chapters are waiting to be written by new hands, with new ideas for new generations. And that is exactly as it should be. Signed, Margaret Finch, Head Librarian, 1972 to 2025. Margaret closes the book gently. The library board thought it was unusual. They wanted a standard resignation letter, but I told them, I've been a librarian for 53 years. Let me resign like one. You sit in silence, moved by the beauty of it, the acceptance, the grace. Aren't you scared? You finally ask. Of what comes next? Of not being this anymore. Terrified, Margaret admits. I've been Margaret the librarian for so long, I'm not entirely sure who Margaret the retiree is. I'll have to discover that, write that story. But that's exciting too. A new chapter, a new book even. I've spent 53 years helping other people find their stories. Now I get to discover more of my own. She stands and moves to the window. The rain has stopped, and weak sunlight breaks through the clouds. I have a sister in Vermont I haven't seen enough of. I have a stack of books I've wanted to read, but never had time for. I have a garden I'd like to actually tend instead of just glancing at on my way to work. I have rest I've earned, time I've saved up, mornings when I can wake slowly instead of rushing here. I'm not ending. Just the librarian part is ending. The Margaret part continues. Different chapters, different adventures. A young woman enters the office. She's in her 40s, with kind eyes and an armful of books. Margaret, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but... Oh, hello, she says, noticing you. Sarah, it's fine. Come in, Margaret says. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. You introduce yourself. This is Sarah Chen, my assistant director, or rather, as of tomorrow, the head librarian. Sarah's face shows a mix of excitement and anxiety. I still can't believe it. I'm not ready. You should stay longer. At least another year. Margaret smiles gently. Sarah, if you were ready, I wouldn't be leaving. The fact that you're nervous means you care. That's all that matters. But what if I make mistakes? What if I change things that shouldn't be changed? What if... Then you'll learn, Margaret interrupts kindly. The same way I learned, by trying, failing, adjusting, trying again. That's how every chapter gets written. She takes Sarah's hand. You're going to do things differently than I did. And that's perfect. That's evolution. That's growth. This library doesn't need another me. It needs the first you. Sarah's eyes fill with tears. I'm going to miss you. I'm not dying, dear. I'm just retiring. You can call me any time, though I suspect you won't need to as often as you think. After Sarah leaves, Margaret turns to you. That's what endings really are, you know. They're passings of the torch. They're making space for what comes next. If I never left, Sarah would never fully step into her role. She'd always be in my shadow, waiting for my approval, hesitating to make bold choices. By leaving, I'm giving her the gift of her own chapter, her own story, her own chance to succeed and fail and learn and grow. That's the greatest gift someone in my position can give. Not staying forever, but leaving at the right time. She checks her watch. The library closes in an hour. Would you like to walk through it with me? One last tour before tomorrow. You agree, and together you leave her office. Margaret walks you through the library. She's tended for 53 years. She shows you the children's section, which she redesigned in 1985 to be more welcoming and colorful. I read to children here every Tuesday morning for 40 years, she says. Watch toddlers become teenagers. Teenagers become parents, bringing their own children. That's 3 generations. That's a legacy. She shows you the reference section, still filled with physical encyclopedias despite the digital age. People think these are obsolete, she says, running her hand along the spines, but there's something about the weight of a book in your hands, the act of turning pages, the journey of discovery. Sarah wants to create more digital resources, and she's right too. But I'm glad I preserved this too. Both can be true. She shows you her favorite reading chair, worn soft by decades of use. I've sat in this chair and read parts of at least 10,000 books, checking them before recommending them, making sure they're appropriate, finding just the right one for just the right person. This chair knows my shape. It's molded to me. In some ways, it will miss me more than anyone. She pauses, hand on the worn leather. Then she smiles. But Sarah will sit here too. And eventually, it will mold to her. That's how it should be. The closing announcement plays. The few remaining patrons gather their things and leave with friendly goodbyes to Margaret. See you tomorrow. Several call. For the last time, Margaret calls back cheerfully. Soon, the library is empty, except for you and Margaret. She moves through the space, turning off lights, straightening books, performing her closing ritual for the second to last time. In the dim light, the library looks different, more ancient, more sacred, like a cathedral of stories. You know what I'll miss most? Margaret says, quietly. This moment, right at closing, when everyone's gone and it's just me and the books. It's the quietest quiet, the most peaceful peace, just the books and me, and the feeling that all these stories are resting, sleeping, waiting for tomorrow's readers. She turns to face you, but tomorrow, someone else will have this moment. And that's okay, because it was never really mine. I was just borrowing it, being a custodian of it. That's what we all are, really. Custodians of moments, caretakers of chapters. We have them for a while, and then we pass them on. The art is in knowing when to pass them on, and then doing it with grace. Outside, the evening is cool and clear. The rain has washed everything clean. Margaret locks the library door, a large, old-fashioned key that will be turned over to Sarah tomorrow. She looks up at the building, at the light glowing through the windows, at the words carved in stone above the door: knowledge, community, growth. 53 years, she says softly. It seems like forever, and like no time at all. She turns to you. Thank you for listening to an old woman reminisce about endings. It wasn't just reminiscing, you say. It was wisdom about how to end things well, how to let go with grace. Margaret smiles. Well, I hope it was useful. We all have chapters that need closing, jobs, relationships, phases of life, versions of ourselves. The key is to close them like you'd close a good book, with satisfaction, with gratitude, with the acknowledgement that it was good while it lasted, and now it's time for something else. Not with bitterness, not with regret, not clinging desperately to pages that have already been read. Close it gently. Thank it for what it gave you. Place it on the shelf with love. And then, when you're ready, reach for a new book. The next day, you return for Margaret's final day. The library is busy. It seems the whole town has come to say goodbye. There's cake. There are flowers. There are speeches from the mayor, from the library board, from patrons whose lives Margaret touched. Sarah gives a beautiful speech about legacy and gratitude and big shoes to fill. Margaret listens with grace, occasionally dabbing her eyes, but mostly smiling. When it's her turn to speak, she keeps it brief. Thank you all for 53 wonderful years. Thank you for letting me serve you, know you, help you find your stories. Tomorrow, Sarah begins her chapter as head librarian. I know she'll write it beautifully. I know this library will continue to be the heart of our community. And I know that endings, while bittersweet, are necessary and good. So I say not goodbye, but the end, which, as we all know, is really just another way of saying to be continued. At 5 p.m., Margaret processes her final book return, a worn copy of Charlotte's Web. She checks it in, runs her hand over its cover one last time, and places it in the return cart. She takes off her name tag, Margaret Finch, head librarian, and hands it to Sarah. Your story now, she says. Sarah pins on her own name tag, already prepared. Sarah Chen, head librarian. I'll try to honor what you built, Sarah says. Don't honor it. Transform it, Margaret replies. That's your job. That's your chapter. They hug. Margaret collects her few personal items, a photo, a mug, her resignation book, and then, at 5:15 p.m. on a Friday in September, Margaret Finch walks out of Riverside Public Library for the last time as an employee. She doesn't look back. She closes the door gently behind her and begins her next chapter. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, think about Margaret walking out of her library. 53 years, over half a century, and she left with grace, with gratitude, with the wisdom of knowing when the story was complete. Think about your own life. What chapters are you clinging to that have already been read? What stories are you trying to continue that have reached their natural conclusion? What books are you refusing to close because you're afraid of what comes next? Margaret teaches us that endings are not failures. They're completions. They're necessary transitions. They're how we make space for new beginnings. You can't start a new book while you're still clutching the old one. You can't write a new chapter while you're rereading the previous one over and over. At some point, you have to close the book. Thank it. Place it on the shelf with love and trust that there are more stories waiting. Different stories, new adventures. Let yourself close the chapters that need closing, not with regret, but with gratitude. That was good. It was complete. And now it's time for something else. That's the wisdom. That's the grace. That's the art of ending well. Sleep now, dear friend. Let go of what needs to end. Tomorrow you can begin a new chapter, but tonight just rest in the completion of this one. You've read enough. You've done enough. You've been enough. Close the book gently, place it on the shelf, and dream of new stories yet to begin. Good night.